Demonstrations against tomorrow's Grand National are expected to take place outside betting shops in Derby. Derby animal welfare members will be dressing up as racegoers and handing out leaflets. £250,000 has been spent at Aintree improving animal welfare standards after the deaths of a number of horses at last year's event. Roger Swain's part of the group. He says it's a horrible sport.
You see a small number of deaths, but you don't see the unseen victims of the whole industry. The ones that don't make the grade. Their future isn't as rosy as the small minority that are lucky enough, if you can call it that, to actually race.
Phil Trow with the morning news on BBC Radio Derby.
So I nailed my colours to the mast in the last half hour of the programme, and I said that tomorrow I'm going to be putting a couple of quid on treacle at 25-1 at the moment in the Grand National. And as far as horse racing goes, it doesn't get much bigger, does it? The Grand National's taking place tomorrow, and hundreds of millions of people are set to watch the race, both at Aintree and on television. It isn't without its controversy, though. Following the deaths of horses last year, more than £250,000 has been spent on improving animal welfare at the course. Well, let's speak to David MacDonald. David is the manager of Uttoxeter Racecourse. Morning to you, David.
Morning, Phil. Good
Thanks.
luck with treacle. You'll need it.
Oh, really? Is that not a great one to go with?
Well, it's got no wins over 3 mile, 1 furlong, and we're looking for a horse that has proven form over 4 miles. So
I'm glad you told me that, because I've not yet put the £2 on, so that might, stay in the pocket.
Well, trends would suggest treacle won't be winning.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll ask for your tip at the end,
Okay.
and that's where my smart money will be going. How big a day of this for the whole sport of horse racing?
Fantastic. Hundreds of millions of pounds backed on the race, and it's a great family occasion, so all the racing authorities want the Grand National to be a thrilling spectacle for British racing. It's a showcase, really, a fantastic event. I mean, we've all got memories of sitting around the TV when colour television probably first came in and watching our first Grand Nationals. It's a great day.
There are those, of course, that don't find it a great day and would prefer that this race should be stopped. What would you say to those people in terms of how racing has changed, especially at the National, over the years?
Well, I don't think we can ignore in racing the scenes of last year. They weren't pleasant, and it put a bit of a dampener on the occasion. And the authorities have done everything that they can this year, and they will continue to do, looking at horse welfare. I mean, there's alterations to the entry requirements. That's absolutely critical, so we're going to have better horses this year. And the theory is that there'll be less fallers because of that. They've looked at the fences and picked out fence 1, fence 4 and fence 6, Beecher's Brook. They're the most difficult fences to jump, so they've made alterations to those. And in the post-race care, when the horse is finished, they've got a new cooling down area where there's plenty of water, and they've even got fans introduced to help the horses to cool down. So they're doing everything they can, and I think that's important. But it is a fantastic occasion and a great test for both horse and rider.
Has it been down as much to the horses as it has the course with these deaths, which I mentioned there's been 20 horses who've died at the Grand National since 2000. How much of that is down to the owners for putting a horse in that clearly isn't up to the course?
Well, I think the authorities have done the right thing with altering the entry requirements. They are very testing fences, so yes, I think everything's been done to improve the situation.
And how much of a priority is animal welfare now in the sport? Does that take priority over the huge amounts of money that clearly this race earns?
Oh, crikey, in racing, animal welfare is the number one priority. If you could see the amount of vets we have on racecourses and the care that's given to the animals, we all feel it if an animal gets injured. It's very, very much top of our priorities.
I suppose animal welfare people would say, well, if you've got any interest at all in horses, then you wouldn't have the race at all.
Well, this is the absolute pinnacle race for horses. It's a fantastic spectacle. It's what the horses are bred to do. They enjoy it. I think it's just a brilliant occasion, and let's hope we can get through tomorrow with a fantastic race and no injuries.
I mean, you mentioned treacle. It probably doesn't stand a chance. I mean, is that the case? When you look at the field, you're a man that knows his horses, although there's some horses that are just making up the numbers and shouldn't really be in this race.
Not really. They're all quality horses, but you would look at, as I mentioned, treacle. It doesn't like to go 4 miles. It's no proven form at that distance. So I would be surprised if treacle finished, but it might surprise us. There's always the surprise. There's the 100-to-1 shot Monmouth, which won a few years ago. Don't Push It won carrying more weight than you'd normally expect a couple of years ago. So there are always the exceptions. The favourite is likely to be Synchronised, which is a Uttoxeter Midlands National winner. Synchronised, it's carrying a lot of weight. Gold Cup winners don't normally win, but Synchronised has broken trends throughout its career. I don't think it'll win. I've looked at the trends of the last 25 years, and I've narrowed it down to 9 horses.
Right, 9?
Chance.
That's going to cost me a fortune if we go with 9.
No, I wouldn't suggest you back them all.
Right.
Some of them are 100 to 1, so I'll be ticking those off, probably. And we've got to look at the ground. Everything depends on whether we get some rain tonight.
Go on, narrow down for us then, David. Give me one.
If it rains, I would go for Giles Cross.
Right.
No doubt about that. But if it doesn't, I'd probably look at Chicago Grey.
OK. By the way, there's nothing wrong with carrying a bit of weight.
We know that.
David MacDonald, the manager of Uttoxeter Racecourse, thanks for joining us on the programme this morning, and we will be hearing from some of those that are against the race just after 8 this morning.
On FM, AM and online. Breakfast with Phil Trow on BBC Radio Derby.
Now, despite almost 600 million people watching it worldwide, the Grand National is often a race that divides opinion. Arguably one of the biggest horse races of the year. It's taking place tomorrow. Over the last 12 months, £250,000 has been spent on improving animal welfare following the deaths of a number of horses. Well, Roger Swain's a member of Derby Animal Welfare. He's against the event and will be part of a number of demonstrations taking place today and tomorrow. Welcome to the programme, Roger.
Good morning, Phil.
Thanks for joining us. Why are you so against it?
Well, the Grand National sort of exposes the few deaths in a very public light, but there's overall, this is just the tip of the iceberg. 18,000 foals are bred for the industry every year, and only about 40% of those make it to racing, and that's a lucky 40%. The others are either killed or just disappear. And then at the end, when they retire, another third of those are killed or disappear as well. So this course may have improved the animal welfare standards a small amount, but it's just a drop in the ocean as far as.
But if we get away with horse
industry.
racing, will none of these horses be bred?
Well, it's just the way the industry's going. You had a really interesting guy on about a month ago when there were a few deaths at Uttoxeter races, and it was a phone-in. I don't know if you remember him, but it was a really interesting guy, an ex-jockey from about 50 years ago or something. I hope I got that right. I don't want to offend him or anything. And he said it's so leaning towards money, and animal welfare is just lost when you look at the sort of £100 million every year that they receive in profits from the betting.
Well, we spoke about animal welfare to David MacDonald. He's the manager of Uttoxeter Racecourse and joined us a little bit earlier. This is what he had to say.
Oh, crikey, in racing, animal welfare is the number one priority. If you could see the amount of vets we have on racecourses and the care that's given to the animals, we all feel it if an animal gets injured. It's very, very much top of our priorities. It's what the horses are bred to do. They enjoy it. I think it's just a brilliant occasion, and let's hope we can get through tomorrow with a fantastic race and no injuries.
Does that give you any reassurance, Roger?
Well, not really. I mean, when you start looking at the figures that are actually in the public domain, they make about £100 million in profit just from the betting alone every year. You'll never guess how much actually goes to retired racehorses. £60,000. That's all they put towards retired horses. So that's like that'll only look after about 20 horses, whereas there's over 7,000 horses that are retired every year.
So is this just the tip of the iceberg? Actually, you're not against the National altogether. It's against the whole racing industry.
Yeah, exactly. And we always quote about we've got the best animal welfare standards in the world, but Norway banned the whip in 1982. Yet we're still using it, and we don't even punish the people that are using it. All we do is give them a race ban, and that's just the jockey. But the winner keeps his money.
So would modifications to racing, would that appease you, or are you just wanting to ban racing altogether?
Oh, that's a difficult one. That's a bit of a divisive one. It depends on your viewpoint, really, because different animal rights people have different strengths.
What's yours?
Oh, I'd like to see it banned, yes.
I mean, we mentioned it's a multi-million-pound industry. It does bring a lot of revenue to this country. That would be a huge hole to fill.
Yeah, but there's also football and other sports that could fill the gap, I'm sure.
So what are you going to be doing on National Day?
Well, tomorrow we're going to be doing the same thing today. We're just going to be handing out leaflets. We've got a number of gentlemen and ladies that are going to be dolled up in a similar fashion to what you see at the races, and we'll just be going around the betting shops handing out leaflets.
Just finally, do you think there's a lot of people like you that don't like the race, but still nevertheless will have a flutter on it?
I don't know, to be honest. I suppose so, yeah. Yeah, and we just hope that if we give them a few facts and figures that maybe they'll think twice about it.
OK, Roger Swain, part of Derby Animal Welfare. Thanks for joining us on the programme this morning. 18 minutes past 8 is the time.
That's BBC Radio Derby Sport at 21 minutes to 9.
Do you bother with the National, Gibbo?
Not in the slightest.
Do you
I'll
not?
give the results out at about, what will it be, 25 past 4 tomorrow afternoon. But yes, 4:15 start at Aintree tomorrow. I think my memory of obviously Red Rum was all very special in the 1970s, but then sport was so much more innocent in those days anyway, so maybe it does have that special feel about it, and I was probably watching it on a black and white TV in those days. But my sort of recent memory of the Grand National is when they had the security alert.
Oh, God,
and that's I think that was 1997. And poor old Gary Lineker, who'd only just come into broadcasting at the time, was suddenly thrust in front of the cameras and said, right, get on with it. Des Lynham's had to clear the whole of Aintree, and poor old Gary Lineker had a bit of a baptism of fire. The other great thing that happened that day, Derby beat Manchester United 3-2 at Old Trafford.
Always the more important of the two.
Absolutely.
Cheers for that. Colin, back with you tomorrow on Sports Scene from 2, and the Grand National. The results will be announced, as Colin says, around about 4:25. It's one of the biggest events in horse racing, but it's also one of the most controversial. Since the year 2000, 20 horses have died on the course, with 2 horses dying last year and the winner being suspended for excessively whipping his horse. With the worries about horse welfare gaining momentum in the last few years, our reporter David Sykes took the arguments against horse racing to some of Derby's biggest racing fans.
I'm here in Derby City Centre and I'm armed with 2 pictures of 2 dead horses. These are the horses that died during last year's Grand National, and I'm going to be pressing punters and bookies on why they think that horse racing is a form of sport and not animal cruelty. So have you placed a bet for the National?
No, not yet, no.
Are you going to?
Yeah, on Saturday. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say that horse racing is a sport, or would you say that it's animal cruelty?
It's a sport.
What about last year's event? I'm looking at a picture right now of a dead horse on a track, surrounded by a tent with horses running past it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Things happen.
So it's not cruelty though?
No.
Happen in any sport, people can break their legs and get injured, so...
When people play sports, they're choosing to play themselves, they're choosing to push themselves. In this, there's a man sitting on them and whipping them.
A lot of the horses enjoy racing. They're trained to race, and they do enjoy it. That's what they're bred for. It's not nice when they fall over or something like that happens, but it is a sport. And the Grand National was seen as cruel a few years ago. That's why the fences were lowered a lot to make it a lot fairer for the sport.
So some punters there reckoning there's really nothing to worry about. But what do you think? This morning I'm going to be asking the question, the Grand National, is it cruel or is it just a bit of fun? Well, Joe Fairbrother is from Second Chance Animal Rescue and joins me this morning. Morning, Joe.
Morning.
You just heard the lady there saying that actually these horses enjoy racing. That's the reason they were bred.
Yeah, I mean, that is a point. There are all horses out there that are bred for racing, but there's racing and there's excessive racing. I mean, you can have the flat race racing where obviously the horses are on the track and they race around. There's no jumps involved. It's just a straight racetrack fun to go at. That, to me, is okay because obviously the horses can do what they want to do. If they want to run faster, they can run faster. You don't need to whip them. The horses can have a good run out. And obviously whoever goes past the cross line is first and wins. But then you've got things like the Grand National where the horses are forced to jump the jumps. And obviously sometimes if the horses, it's like humans, are on a bad day, they don't want to jump, that's when the accident happens. And then it's the horses that have to die. And I think that is the cruel sport of it.
Do you think therefore it's a cruel method of entertainment almost for us?
It is, because we're watching an animal that's being whipped and whipped and whipped to do these jumps, and obviously if the ground is soft and they trip or something, the horse might have gone into the jump correctly, but then obviously on the landing, anything can happen if it's slippy, and then obviously the horse goes under, and that's when the horse breaks the legs. And obviously if a horse breaks its legs, you can't mend it like you can a dog or a cat. Unfortunately, you have to have the horse destroyed, and I don't think that's fair.
I mean, clearly this is something that raises huge amounts of money in this country. Millions of pounds are bet on it. It's the big race day of the year, isn't it? It's huge money generated as well. Arguably, would you say that finances has overtaken from the safety of the horses?
Yeah, massively. Money talks with anything to do with racing, and that's why, really, if they're going to do the Grand National, why can't they just do another flat race Grand National? So then the horses are safe. They're just running because they enjoy the running, because yes, that's what they are trained to do, but these horses are trained excessively to get in the way that they are to race. It's not just any horse put onto a track. It is obviously big horses that are trained day in, day out for hours at a time, and they are pushed to the utmost limits to do that finish line.
I suppose, though, those millions of pounds which are put on the National wouldn't go on there if everybody felt the same as you. Do you think that actually people have got a responsibility when they're placing their bets tomorrow?
Yeah, they should have, really. I mean, it's not fair. It's one day, so why... I can't see why this one day is so important for the punters out there for their money. It is just a one-day race, but they've got to think of the lives of these animals and the training they have to go through, which they don't need to go through all that training. They don't need to go through all that excessive whipping and things like that just for the one race, just so somebody can make a few quid out of it.
Are you satisfied that enough has been done in recent years to prevent these accidents? Fences have been lowered, there's better cooling off areas for these horses, apparently selection process is a lot more rigorous nowadays. Do you think actually they've recognised the fact that people have been alarmed by the deaths in the National and that they have made adjustments to hopefully prevent that in the future?
Yeah, they are, obviously, with all the animal welfare laws that are coming out now, it is getting more recognised that obviously things have to be done, but saying that they're still making these horses do this when there's no need to do all of this.
Well, let's hear from Dave from Derby, who just wants to respond to that. Morning, Dave.
Hi, good morning.
Morning. What do you think?
Well, I think you ought to have informed people on who know what they're talking about, because horse racing is not cruel. Horse racing is a natural thing. It's been going on for hundreds of years. It happens. There's horse racing all over the world, in virtually every country throughout the world.
Are we talking horse racing here, or are we talking what you're putting the horses through tomorrow?
I'm talking horse racing.
So you're talking about going over hurdles, over fences, over that distance of a course?
Where would you think that the national hunt racing comes from? The originations of it. They come from country people, farmers, from point to point. It's this natural thing. Horses love jumping. You watch when the jockey falls off, the horse carries on jumping. You watch in the Grand National, the horse carries on jumping.
But horses might love jumping, but do they want to jump over a 4-mile course where they're actually being asked to jump excessive fences? Do you think, it might be very natural for a horse to jump,
the fences aren't excessive. If you want to talk about excessive fences, talk about equestrian show jumping, where horses, they're not forced, but horses jump over 7-foot-high walls in the arena.
Joe, you've heard what Dave's had to say. What do you think?
Well, I mean, he says obviously horses are there for jumping. Yes, there's a difference. You have horses that do like jumping, but with things like the Grand National, it is a very long run for them to keep going and going and going with the jumps. A 4-mile race. So could you run 4 miles then and jump over all the hurdles in front of you then?
Of course, if I was trained for it, of course I would. If I was bred for it, which is what the horses are.
But in the training, you have to be whipped and whipped and whipped. You think that's okay?
You know they're not allowed to whip and whip and whip, because that's not allowed anymore.
Well, the winner was suspended, wasn't he, for excessively whipping his horse last year at the race, we should say that. Do you think, though, that, Dave, that you can enjoy horse racing and we can still breed horses and we can still put money on races, maybe not without the obstacles that they present at the Grand National, where clearly there have been a number of deaths? 20 horses have died since the year 2000.
That means you're taking out racecourses like Uttoxeter, like Ludlow, like Market Raisin, all the horses, horses die. Horses have accidents. Even flat horses. I can remember last year, Frankie Dettori was in a flat race, and they were galloping away, and his horse pulled up because it had fractured its leg, and that's on a flat race. It happens. Horses running round a field in the paddock can break the legs. It happens.
Dave, good to hear your view this morning. Joe, thank you for your thoughts as well. It's two very different sides to the story there. Which one do you back? Let me know your thoughts this morning. 01332 616161 is the number to call. You can text 81333. Start your text message with the word Derby. We're asking the question this morning. The Grand National, is it cruel or is it just a bit of fun? Lots of you getting in touch this morning with regards to the Grand National. We're asking the question today, is it cruel or is it just a bit of fun? Thanks for your comments on this. You can text 81333. Don't forget to start your text message with the word Derby. You can give us a call this morning, 01332 616161. Morning to Joe, who's in Chaddesden, says the Grand National is a glamorised national disgrace. Shame on you if you put money on a flutter. Morning to Cliff, who's in Ilkeston, says, I'm not a big horse fancier. I hardly ever bet and hardly ever watch a horse race, but a horse is far stronger than a man and has a brain. If that horse doesn't want to jump, then surely it won't. I have seen it where horses have refused, and I've seen where riderless horses carry on jumping. OK, I would possibly agree that some fences are on the large side, but this is the top of the league. Your thoughts this morning. Is it cruel or is it just a bit of fun? The Grand National, what's your thoughts? Will you still be heading to the bookies tomorrow? Maybe you're one of these people that actually objects to the National but still has a little flutter on it. Or have you decided that you don't like the race and therefore you're not going to put any money on? Your thoughts. 01332 616161